Hello and welcome to Who Wore It Better, where I review Raw and Smackdown back-to-back and try and figure out which show won for the week. My road tour during the holiday week continues. I'm reporting to you from my childhood bedroom because I work where I can. Raw begins with Baron Corbin opening the show and he introduces Stephanie McMahon, and while she's coming out, the announcers do acknowledge the fact that even though SmackDown won the Tag Team Survivor Series match in the pre-show, it didn't count. Raw did a whole clean sweep, which Stephanie reinforced in her promo at the top of the show. Baron Corbin tries to ask to make his position as GM a little more permanent when Braun Strowman comes out and says, it's my time to fight Baron Corbin like I agreed to do by being part of the Survivor Series team. Stephanie makes a TLC match between the two of them at the TLC pay-per-view, and if Corbin wins, he's permanent GM, and if he loses, he's out of authority completely. In the promo, Strowman says he's going to tear Corbin limb from limb, and then Stephanie tries to do kind of a joke line to add on to that, where she says, hey, dismemberment's not a good corporate look, or something like that, which I think was kind of a shocking thing to say, in the wake of this whole crown jewel controversy where you're going to this country whose government, ordered the killing, the dismemberment of a journalist. That was kind of a tacky line there, meant for a laugh. It was more kind of like a nervous laugh when I first heard that. Anyway, Stephanie adds that Braun will fight Brock Lesnar for the title at the Royal Rumble if he defeats Baron Corbin at TLC. Corbin wants to make a handicap match up next between Strowman versus Lashley and McIntyre, but Stephanie just says, let's make it a six-man tag. So it's Strowman, Elias, and Finn Balor versus McIntyre, Corbin, and Lashley, who I believe is wearing a brand new leather vest. Looked very dapper on him. The match ends basically where it becomes 3-on-1. It's an elimination match now. So Strowman's all that's left, and then the other three heels just beat down on him, and Corbin assaults him and smashes his arm with some steel stairs, and his elbow's bleeding and everything. So that's the way they get rid of him. This whole hour-long segment, this whole story from the opening of the show to the end of this match took a little less than an hour. The entire first hour was occupied by this. For it to end in a DQ finish or kind of a no contest thing was pretty lame. The whole beatdown angle at the end of the segment was reportedly meant to write Strowman off for a time because he's taking time off to get elbow surgery. So him actually appearing at TLC is kind of like a maybe he will, maybe he won't situation. Either way, it gets Baron Corbin over more as a heel, which is nice because someone in his position needs to be. I've said that time and time again for him. So yeah, either way, either builds more of a kind of a sympathetic thing for Strowman to fight Baron Corbin and wants people to root more for him against Corbin, or it's just a nice way to write him off for TLC and they'll find some way to get him involved in the title match at Royal Rumble. Seth Rollins comes out, he cuts a strong promo tying in the new Dean Ambrose documentary they're showing on the network. He challenges Dean to a fight, he shows up on the big screen and he's hiding from Seth backstage. He manages to try and get heat by suggesting that Roman Reigns, his leukemia returning, is karma for what the Shield did years ago, which I think is kind of fucked up. It's one thing to try and get heat on a wrestler who's on the shelf due to an injury that they'll eventually come back from, but Roman Reigns could die. That's just kind of weird trying to get hate on somebody or trying to get heat on somebody who very well could die from this illness. That's a little beyond the pale for me, and some people might call me a snowflake for saying that, but that's how I feel. Seth goes after Dean backstage. He looks for him all night. Every so often you cut back to segments where, Seth is looking for Dean and Dean's sneaking off in the background and there's the words "burn it down" written on the door and everything, playing mind games with Seth all night. At one point, Seth beats up a mouthy security guard backstage, and that's what takes up a lot of the time there. One thing I will say about this angle is it's making Renee Young look really dumb, because every time Dean does something now, they immediately, Cole and Graves look to her, well, what do you have to say about this? This is your husband, is he not? And then she has to try and defend herself or defend him. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know. How do you not know? You travel with him. You live with him. It makes Renee look kind of dumb, and it's weird that she's kind of caught in the middle of this. I'm not saying that they should ignore the fact that Dean and Renee are married in real life. I'm not saying they should ignore that relationship, but to keep going back to Renee every time something happens, and she has to say, I don't know, why are you asking me all these questions? Eventually, she's just going to snap on these two guys if they keep prodding her for questions. We have Bayley and Sasha Banks versus Nia Jax and Tamina. Alexa Bliss is on commentary, naturally. It's a decent match. I loved Bayley's fire in her comeback, but she's ultimately flattened by Nia Jax for the heels to win. Everyone still hates Nia Jax. We get the Lucha House Party versus the Revival. They say at the top of the match it's under Lucha House rules, which means it's a handicap match, 3-on-2, in favor of the baby faces, which is unusual. You'd think that if the Revival were two larger dudes, you could justify a handicap match like that, but the Revival are smaller guys. They're not that much bigger than Lucha House Party guys, so it's really weird and kind of unfair, and Corey Graves is losing his shit over this the entire match, and it's actually pretty entertaining. Lucha House Party does win, but what do you expect? It's 3-on-2. Ronda Rousey shows up, and she is showing no signs of massive damage, either from the beatdown she suffered from Charlotte the night before on Survivor Series, or from the fact she's been getting dunked on constantly by Becky Lynch on Twitter. I mean, seriously, I was flabbergasted by the fact that Ronda's basically no-selling this beatdown. I know a lot of people have been criticizing that Ronda's like selling too much during her matches, but there's a difference between like selling in the course of a match, which I think she's doing too much of, and no-selling this, what was billed as a horrific beatdown from 24 hours before that involved a chair wrapped around her neck, which she's not doing enough of. It was really weird, but Ronda cuts this promo about how champions don't quit, and even when she's beaten down, she's going to fight, she wants to defend the championship. Corbin comes out and says no, and then Ronda actually, I think she kind of challenges him to a match, which he doesn't say anything on, doesn't comment on, just moves ahead. So, one notch below for him. Like he's one step forward and two steps back, that Baron Corbin. So he finds a competitor, a contender for Ronda Rousey here, and it's Mickie James. And Ronda destroys Mickie James. So Ronda Rousey, who got beat to fuck by Charlotte the night before and got brutalized with a kendo stick and had beat up with the chair and everything, she comes out and she can just completely destroy Mickie James, former multiple-time women's champion, all this stuff, a woman who's had a competitive match with Ronda Rousey in the past, and she just gets destroyed. That left a bad taste in my mouth. Earlier in the night, there was a scene backstage in catering where Drake Maverick was made fun of by everyone for pissing his pants at the Survivor Series, so this led to this match where AOP takes on the team of Ruble. From right away, the crowd's chanting AOPP at the Authors of Pain, which is like, that's not fair. They're not the ones who pissed their pants, and they gotta suffer anyway. Gable wins in a surprise with kind of a sunset flip from the top rope to win the matchup. They're your Raw Tag Team Champions, and you've made them look like jokes in 24 hours. And, Akam and Razor didn't even do anything. It was all based on what the manager did, and now it's rubbing off on them. That's not a very good look. Like, I think for AOP to get this moment to shine here with their Raw Tag Champs, and they're immediately, getting their legs cut out from under them with this stupid, pissing gimmick, it's very counterproductive. Natalya takes on Ruby Riott in a follow-up to what happened when Ruby did the unthinkable and broke the sunglasses of Jim the Anvil Neidhart, which we only saw for the first time that one night, and now we're supposed to believe it's like a Horcrux, has this big significance. Anyway, it's a decent matchup. Natalya wins with the roll-up, and that's the end. Let's just call that good and have these two teams move on for a bit. After Seth Rollins apparently leaves the arena to catch a flight, the final segment of Raw is Dean Ambrose coming out to the ring to cut a pretty dry heel promo where he tries to further explain his actions, saying, "You all would have done the same thing I did if given the chance, I guess." And so that brings Seth Rollins out. He comes back out. He runs up. They have a fight. Dean Ambrose does a big ol' uppercut to the beanbag of Seth Rollins. Man, what is it with baby faces getting their dicks kicked and punched in? It is a sad state of affairs for baby faces and their baby face ball sacks. Dean hits Seth with two dirty deeds. We fade to black. This was, I don't know how to feel about this. I don't think it advanced anything. I think that this bit between the two of them was just them spinning their wheels all night in the absence of something else better to do or some other better way to advance the storyline. I know you got, 4 weeks to build a TLC, but this one to me just kind of felt like it was a lateral more than anything else. Over on SmackDown, Charlotte Flair opens the show and she immediately says, "I beat Ronda Rousey's ass and I'm damn proud of it." Wow, how about that? A female heel who doesn't start out the promo sounding remorseful before turning the tables on you. What an original concept. Paige comes out and says that, well, because you put your hands on a bunch of officials in that match, I'm going to fine you $100,000. What a ludicrous number they gave there. They just threw out for this fine thing. What was it? A couple years ago at SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar was fined $500 for, busting Randy Orton's head open in kayfabe, and this is like $100,000, and that's not even an issue of bias. It's just Paige throwing this number out somewhere. It reminds me of like every small town indie I've seen where it's like the commissioner or someone, "I'm going to fine you $5,000. I'm like, this is a shitball indie fed. That's his whole life savings you're fining him. Don't do $5,000. I'm just saying Paige should have started a little lower, like maybe $50,000 at the absolute tops. 45 sounds like a nice number to me. Then the Iconics show up to clown on Charlotte and she challenges them to a match. I could have sworn that Charlotte was a heel now, but okay. She takes on Billie Kay and then Peyton Royce one after the other. I love this part where after the first match, Charlotte challenges Peyton to come in the ring and Peyton's like, "Get in there!" She's like, egging her on and everything. She's like, "Go in there!" The chemistry with those two is just so great, and I love them in this role. During the second match, it ends in a DQ. The Iconics start beating down on Charlotte. And the weirdest thing happened. They go to the timekeeper's area to grab a chair, and the timekeeper says, "No, you don't." And he takes the chair away from them. That's never happened before in the history of wrestling. That was mind-blowing to me that the timekeeper stood up and said, "No, you will not have this chair." So weird. And I'll explain why it's weirder in a minute. But then Charlotte gets up, double spears them, just murders the Iconics here in this segment. And that's where it pretty much ends. Charlotte just beats some ass again, and she's getting cheered for it. Like, it's so weird because we all swore that what we saw on Sunday was a heel turn, but basically she was just imbued apparently with Becky Lynch's badass powers where, fans like wrestlers who kick ass and don't cut cheesy promos and who just, they want to fight. That's what people like in their wrestlers. That's what we've seen, from what Becky Lynch does and what Charlotte Flair does. No matter who they beat up, if they at least stick to their guns and are fun to watch, then yeah, fans will cheer for them. That's what we have here. So they're definitely deliberately keeping Charlotte a babyface here, but it's way more clear-cut than what they were trying to do with Becky Lynch a couple months ago, where they wanted to make her a heel, but she was too likable of a heel. The main event is Rey Mysterio versus Randy Orton. So through the night, we have a promo from each of them backstage, and Rey's, I think, is really bizarre because, first of all, you see his eyes darting from left to right the entire time as if he's reading a prompter in front of his face, and then at one point in his promo, he says, like what he did to Jeff Hardy. And he says, big long pause, and the way he said it, his inflection, made it sound like he was tossing to a video package that never showed up. And so then he just keeps talking, but that totally took me out of it, because I could have swore he was about to toss to a highlight package of Randy Orton beating up Jeff Hardy, but it never happened. It was so weird. And then later we got a promo from Randy Orton, which I thought was a lot better, a lot more intense. I liked his delivery a lot more. And then all of a sudden when he was done, he made this weird thing with his face where every part of his face twitched at different times. It was weird. Up next, Miz TV with special guest Shane McMahon, and Miz does a great job putting Shane McMahon over to the point of it's obvious he's sucking up to Shane. He calls himself a Shane Stan, for example, and he says that, even the best in the world needs a little encouragement, and he says the two of them should be a team, and here's their first opponents as a team together. It's Wayne and Dane Bryant, who are actually Eli Everfly and Kata Murray on the indie scene, and the Miz beats up Everfly. He stalls, turns around, goes to pick him up, but Eli rolls him up into a small package, and the Jobbers win. They beat the Miz clean as a whistle. In fact, Kata Murray didn't do anything. It was all Eli the entire time. So kudos to Eli for doing that. I think Miz is the only person on the roster who could take a loss like that and it wouldn't ruin him. He was being so goofy and so entertaining the whole time. It's hard to get mad at him for that. It's understandable why he lost. Also, speaking of understandable, I don't understand, because if the whole end point is Shane's turning heel, I don't really know how that makes it look more like he's turning a heel. And if the plan is to have, Miz turn face while Shane turns heel, I don't know if that makes him look like a babyface either. It's just a really weird segment. It was entertaining, but it was also just kind of confusing. Coming up next, the Thanksgiving feast fight as the New Day take on the Bar yet again. The New Day are dressed up as pilgrims. I wanted to see more of R-Truth as the gobbledygooker outside after what we saw backstage. That would have been fun. Xavier Woods has the numbers 6 and 1 printed on his shirt to reflect the actual score from Survivor Series. He even opens the promo saying 6 and 1 before Kofi starts talking, and that was just great timing. And they bring it up some more as well. Very entertaining promo. Big E starts performing oral or something, or some kind of cunnilingus on the turkey. Big E's nasty. He gets away with doing a lot of nasty stuff. And then the Bar interrupt, and they have themselves a match, and that's also very entertaining. The Big Show and Sheamus each go through a table. They beat Sheamus, and then they throw a whole bunch of Thanksgiving fixings onto Cesaro, and he gets knocked out. It was definitely an entertaining segment, but I wish it didn't come at the expense of Cesaro and Sheamus, because now you've got both your tag team champions across both shows looking like idiots. Naomi and Asuka take on Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville. They're definitely continuing to push this narrative of the dissension between Sonya and Mandy going all the way back from Evolution. And there's more of that here. At one point, Sonya actually gets Mandy out of the way and she takes a bullet for her from Asuka. Asuka wins with the Asuka lock on Sonya. And again, we're pushing more of this narrative. Although I really hope that this doesn't end in a breakup between the two, like these storylines automatically always seem to have. We don't need to see any more tag teams breaking up. The new champion, Daniel Bryan, shows up to explain his actions. I was kind of miffed at his placement on the card tonight because I figure, even if the stuff with Ronda and Charlotte on Sunday was the fresher piece of news. Still, the fact that you had this wild title change last week on SmackDown and you don't open with it or close with it, I think was a weird thing. He was like the semi-main spot. That being said, it was a really, really interesting promo from Daniel where he talks entirely in the third person, recounting his story of, his initial betrayal was him retiring, and then the journey he took spending all the time in the hyperbaric chamber to get better, and he comes back, but the yes chants go away, and the fans are moving on without him. He's angry at the world, basically, and he says that when he was getting beat up by Brock was beating the fear out of him, and it is now a new Daniel Bryan has emerged, and he wants to be announced now as the new Daniel Bryan. Hopefully it won't end up like New Coke. All I'll say about this is it took a few years, but it turns out Bray Wyatt's brainwashing finally worked on Daniel Bryan. Main event time as Rey Mysterio takes on Randy Orton. The big story in this match is that it's going on. Orton takes several moments to try and rip away Rey Mysterio's mask. There's no fewer than 3 moments where the audio just cuts out because I think they're censoring somebody swearing. Who's swearing so much in this matchup? Rey goes for his belly slide out of the ring onto the floor, but Orton catches him with an RKO onto the floor, brings him back into the ring, another RKO. Even though Rey's mask is still on his head, you can clearly see his face at this point. The illusion is gone. He goes out to grab a steel chair, and now the big bad timekeeper doesn't try to interfere. He lets them get the chair. Ooh. And so anyway, Orton pulls a Kevin Owens to Chris Jericho from last year, puts it around Rey's neck, throws him into the corner post, rips the mask off and holds it up, and that's how we fade to black. Very interesting. 2 weeks in a row on SmackDown, you get this kind of big, jarring, shocking moment. I liked it. Time now for me to decide which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And this week it's not even close. SmackDown wins by a mile. I think Raw was easily one of the worst ones of the year. Just so frustrating and disappointing and head scratching in a lot of cases. Stephanie's dismemberment joke to kick off the show I thought was a little tacky. The stuff with Ambrose and Rollins I didn't think was that great. It was good. The stuff that they showed will look good in the hype package for this match, but that's literally all it accomplished because as far as actually building a story, it didn't do any of that. I think Ronda Rousey basically no-selling the beatdown from the night before made Charlotte look totally weak. I don't like this where they're going with AOP and how they've kind of relegated them to a comedy act, or at least have defanged them seriously with this thing with Drake Maverick. In kayfabe, the best thing AOP can do is fire him as the manager so they don't have to carry on this whole AOPP thing going, because that's just dragging them down. It doesn't benefit them in any way. Over on SmackDown, there wasn't much in the way of great wrestling matches, but there was a lot of interesting storytelling and character developing throughout the show, and some very entertaining stuff. I really enjoyed Charlotte's aggression here, and kind of an interesting way they flipped this, what seemed like an obvious heel turn, and kind of just turning that into a more aggressive babyface Charlotte. I really enjoyed Daniel Bryan's promo. What an interesting twist on this character. If he keeps speaking in third person, that could be really something interesting. I enjoyed the Thanksgiving feast fight. I don't like the fact that it came at the expense of the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, but that's kind of a nitpick thing. And I enjoy the story they told with the main event with Orton and Mysterio. We've seen Mysterio get unmasked a few times before in WWE. I'm curious to see where this will go from here and how they can play off that. Is Mysterio gone again? Is he pulling a Kurt Angle and getting jobbed out of TV for a while after they bring him back so soon? Time will tell, but I'm curious to see where they go with that feud. Let me know what you guys thought about Raw and SmackDown this week in the comments section below, and be sure to vote which show you thought was better in the gimmick in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com, and check out Patreon.com/WrestlingWithRegret for exclusive perks and bonus content. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.